So it's part 3 of lesson 9. We've managed to break our Google authentication because they did a few things wrong that we'll have to fix. So the first thing that I neglected in app.js was when we referenced Google, much like with Passport, we actually need the Google strategy. So on line 16 where I referenced Google, it should be Passport. We need to reference the strategy like we did with local. And just to be consistent, I'll maybe change my variable name from Google to Google strategy. So that's our first problem. So now that causes another error because we've renamed our variable to Google strategy up here. So this needs to be new Google strategy down here. Now we're still getting errors. That's okay. The other thing is this session management, it should happen after. We need to configure Google first before we call serialize and deserialize. So I'm going to move that stuff down here. Now we have some more things to do in here in our configuration. It's not complete, which is part of the reason we're still getting some errors. Saying it requires a verify callback. We haven't included that yet. You'll have to bear with me because somehow I managed to not include some of the notes I wanted for this. So I'm just going to reference a few things in my file from last semester. So we've basically gotten to here. We're doing passport.use. We also need this. We need to extract from Google the user's profile ID and their email address. So we're going to add this. So this is an array, and the field we want are ID and email. Whoops, sorry, emails should be. Yes, we could extract other things from their Google profile as well. We really just need their email address because we want to show that in the header, and we're going to save their Google ID to our database, which means we're going to have to modify our user model. Right now, our user model only has what Passport gives us, right? So we didn't remember last week, we said, if we open up our user model, Rob, you had asked, what if we want a phone number, right? So we defined that. So we also will put in here a Google ID as a string. It's not required because if someone signed up locally, obviously we don't have their Google ID. So that value will be null. We'll need to make one other change in here in a minute, so we'll leave this file open, but we'll go back to our app.js, keep working on it. So we won't actually store their Google email. We'll just display that in the header. But the Google ID we will store. Because we need to know when they sign in with Google if we have to create them in our database or if they're already in the database. So that's what we're doing here. We're setting up the strategy. And now here is our function when we. So our strategy, what we're doing is we're going to check whether this person already exists in our users table or not. So we're going to call this method that right now won't work. We'll need we'll need an NPM package called find or create. So it will take that Google ID, it will look in our user model, in our database, and see if we already have them. If we have them, we let them log in. If we don't have them, we're obviously going to create them with this Google ID. So all of this actually goes we're kind of chaining, we're setting up the strategy. We get an access token from Google. We get what's called a refresh token. We get back a user profile. Our last parameter is called done. So these parameters are built into the Passport package with Google. We want to call find or create. Right now, this method will crash. It doesn't exist, but there's an NPM package that will run a find or create method for us. So we've got to pass in the Google ID and username. So we get the ID from the user profile object Google sends us. And we set as our username their primary email address with Google. So that's what we're going to save. So we will save their email address that's attached to their Google account. We'll also save their unique Google ID because they could change their email address potentially. So we're going to call this find or create. And then we just have a callback that will give us one of two things, either an error or a new user. Actually, this could just be, put that in as callback instead. Doesn't really matter. We're checking what we get back here. So here's our setting it up of what information we're passing to Google and what information in the profile we're interested in. This is what happens when we actually ask the Google Passport package to authenticate the user. We're not really interested in the access token or refresh token. We're really interested in the profile object that Google sends us. And then we're going to check if we already have that user profile in our database or not. And if we don't, we want to create it. Now, this is going to fail right now because find or create, this is not part of Mongoose. Mongoose has create, it has find, it has remove, but it doesn't have find or create. So right now, this is interesting. Consumer key option. We'll have to figure out what that's about. We also need this. We need a package here to do find or create. I'm going to stop my app. And I believe there is an NPM package for this. So this is a small, simple package. So it's basically an add-on to Mongoose. This developer said, hey, Mongoose should have this, but it doesn't, so I'm going to build this. So search for a document. If it doesn't exist, add it. So we just want to install this package, npm I find -or -create with --save. Find -or -create. So it's kind of a useful thing to have. And now we'll need to reference and plug this into our user model. So our user model has access to find or create. So I installed it with --save. And I'll reference it here. Now we can just plug it in. So we're basically, it's just basically an extension for Mongoose. Now let's see where this gets us. We may have to do a bit more. Okay. It's the query and doc arguments. There's our query. Whoops, this should be return. Let's just see if we're missing something else here. Oh, I didn't install the right version of the package. I wanted this one, mongoose-find or create. Oh well. It's mongoose-find or create as one word, --save. I know it's hard to see. Mongoose. We'll use this package instead. And now I'm going to update my model again. We want this one. We could uninstall the other one, I think. No, that's okay because it's just a variable name. I just change which package that variable points to. We'll try again. Okay. It doesn't like. We're getting warmer. Oh, I've called and brackets there, which I think WebStorm put in for me. Okay, yeah, so that was the problem. I took out the bracket. So we got one more issue now in Passport. So it's saying, looking for something called consumer key. That's interesting. Rather than maybe, let's see. There's not much here in terms of documentation. This might just be a unit test. This is probably just the source file. It does look like it's using the, so I wonder if we change that, let's see, to consumer key. We'll see if that, okay, and wants consumer secret. Okay, now it says it's running. Be nice if we had some documentation telling us what values we need to pass, but we'll get it sorted out, hopefully. Okay, so we're running again. We still haven't written any methods to do the Google sign-in and process the callback. So in our index.js, we need two methods. We need a get Google and a get Google / callback. So in index.js, let's write a get / Google. So in this case, we're going to call passport.authenticate Google. And it requires this value called scope. I think is going to be the user email, but I want to double check. Yeah, sorry. We're going to pass in, we're saying the profile's email address. That's what we need. We want their profile, sorry, and their email. So this should pop up the Google login box. We can try it. So if we try our Google login, let's see if it actually loads. Okay. It's tried. But there may be something else missing. Yeah, passport. See if we're missing anything here. I don't think Google is included here. Now that's really old. So I don't think our problem is our get method. Let's see, what did we use? Okay, let's look there. I wonder also if we need to use Passport Google OAuth 2.
If you're using OAuth 1, they want you to use consumer and OAuth 2.
Okay, so I maybe mixed up my OAuth versions a little bit. Let's look here. Okay. Okay, so here's how to do it with OAuth 1. Use OAuth strategy consumer key. So that's what we installed. We installed passport-google-OAuth. We may be, so let's use a different strategy. We'll follow this. Thanks for the tip, Rob. Instead of the Google strategy, we want, maybe let's try the OAuth 2 strategy. So I'm going to change this to .OAuth 2 strategy. So we'll change that, and I think their documentation says we do use client ID and client secret for OAuth 2. We used consumer key and consumer secret for OAuth 1. So let's use OAuth 2. So down here in the Google section, yeah, they've used client ID, client secret, and callback URL. And notice URL is all caps. So we better change ours here to match. So we'll put these back to client ID, And client ID is a capital. Both the I and the D are capitalized. My error says it requires client ID, capital I, capital D. Okay, now it's running. Well, we'll try it again. Okay, so that seems to give us the right result. Takes us to Google, loads our app. Again, I'll just show you the changes we made to do that. Thank you for the tip, Rob. My 17-year-old daughter was complaining that she has teachers who they get mad at her when she ever if any students suggest a different way of doing things other than what the teacher said. She said, on my test, I have to tell the teacher exactly, I have to do it exactly the way the teacher wants, even if I arrive at the right answers. I am grateful that you guys find better ways, find ways to fix things and better ways to do things than the way I'm doing them. So again, just to review, we use the OAuth 2 strategy. And we configured it with client ID, capital I, capital D, and callback URL, capital U, capital R, capital L. Now, we still haven't written the code here on Google Callback. So right now, if I sign in with a Google account, the process is just going to hang because Google doesn't know where to come back. It's going to try to call Google Callback, but actually may not hang, may just get a 404 error. So now we need the last thing we need in index.js is we need the get handler. Get Google /callback. So we need to tell Passport to authenticate with Google. We want to set up failure redirect here. Otherwise, we'll take them to the cars page. Hang on, my syntax is a little bit off here. Whoops, scope. We also need this. There, I think that's our syntax. But this is what happens if the Google authentication fails. If Google authentication is successful, redirect to the cars page. So we'll try to log in with Google. I'll first put in an invalid login, then we'll try a valid login. We'll see if it lets us in, and then we'll also have to look at what happens in our MongoDB when we sign in with Google, right? It's going to be different than if we've signed in with our local username and password. So I'll just go back and try again. Okay, what happened? Just trying. Okay, it's tried to save this entire thing as my username. It's a whole JSON object with two values, value and type. So obviously we're going to have to modify this a little bit where we're saving the username. So it's trying to do this right here. We're setting user.profiles. So rather than email 0, that's not good enough, or we're not referencing the right thing because that's giving us a whole object. What I missed here is dot value. Okay. When I said profiles.emails, that's that whole array. It's the profiles.email 0 first email.value. We want this. Try again. So now it logs me in with my address for my Google account. Now notice we don't have a password. So let's have a look in MongoDB for a minute. What does a Google user look like versus a local user? So here's our card tracker. Here's our users collection. So a number of you are using my database, obviously. So notice, so here's my Google account. So you notice I have a Google ID attached here. So it gives me a unique ID. It stores my Google ID that comes back from Google, and it saves my email address attached to my Google account. There's no salt and there's no hash value. So that find or create ran. It didn't find me in the database, so it then created me. Now, if I log out, I'm still logged into Google. So now I should just be able to click and it signs me right back through. But if I go and sign out of my Google account, so now I'm anonymous again. Now it brings me through the full Google sign-in this case. Right, so now it's asking me for the password as well. So it runs that find or create. It finds me because I already have an account with that username. So now as authenticated with Google, I can still go in, I can add, edit, delete. I generally don't recommend staying signed into your Google account. So it took a little configuration, right? We needed to get the right strategy. So thanks again for Rob for pointing out where the documentation was. So we want to use OAuth 2. We configure those 3 values. Now, if I want to put this live, if I deploy this, I won't be able to log in with Google on Heroku. Why not? Yeah, because my callback URL right now in my globals is local. So if I want to make this live, what I need to do, I'll comment that line out. And I will go and get my Heroku link. So now it won't work locally, but if I push, it should deploy to Heroku, and I should be able to sign in. I'll try that. No way I can't stop my server. I will just go and push this and we'll try it online. So we'll give this a minute. Heroku should be set to automatically deploy. Okay, so it's done my deployment. Heroku actually, when we left on the last break, incidentally, I had broken the app because I'd made a bunch of errors, and Heroku actually sent me an email saying we tried, when I pushed to GitHub, it sent me a deployment failed email when we were on the break. So now we'll try. So it pops up, which is good. So now it redirects me to the live URL, and I'm signed in with my Google account live. Again, I can't sign in with Google locally now, right? So you probably want both those values in your global file, and you can toggle them. When you're developing, use local. When you're deploying, make sure the live one is enabled. So we had to configure a fair bit of stuff today. We had to create the app on Google and save our credentials. We had to install the Passport package. So there are other Passport packages for Facebook, for LinkedIn, for GitHub, for Twitter. So one of the things I want you to do in your assignment is read the docs and install one of the other Or I think that's maybe one of the things you can do for bonus. You have to configure the strategy by reading the documentation properly. And then we added, well, we tried a couple times before we got the right package here. So our model could search for a user, and if it didn't find it, create it. We also had to set out the property. So if we were doing Facebook, we would need a Facebook ID property to be added to our model. And then we wrote these two routes for loading the Google login screen and processing the Google callback. If you try to implement a different provider, you're going to have it's going to be very similar. Not exactly the same as Google, but 90% of it will be similar. And the kinds of logic that we put on our forms, you'll need this in your assignment as well. So again, anonymous users can see your data. They can't change it, however. So we want to write checks in our views, and you can use this. You can use this file in your assignment as it is. I don't consider it copying, okay? Because we really don't have to change anything here for authenticating users. And then you link it into your controllers, and you can call it on all your private methods. So you can use this functions file as it is. You don't have to rewrite it. It's not plagiarism. Okay, so you can take this file from the GitHub repository. Not a bad idea that you try to type it yourself so that you learn it, but you don't have to do anything really differently with this file. Does anybody have questions about any of the stuff we've done today? Was anybody able to successfully get their Google login to work?
It says user is not defined.
User is not defined. You have user with a capital U. It may just be a case issue. So we're using user here with a capital U. And then in the callback, it's lowercase. So this is our model, and this is the user profile that comes back. So have a look there. Cassidy, yours worked. Anybody else besides Cassidy get theirs to run? Okay, yours running? Syntax issues? Okay, I can...
Authenticate is not fine.
Okay. So that would be in your index.js, right? The check there with yours. I will stick around and troubleshoot a bit. If anybody likes, I'd like to help people get what? It's working or it's not working?
No, it's working. It's just it's not showing my name.
Okay.
Because the console is trying to
Yeah.
use it to show me everything.
But it's not showing you? Hmm.
It works. Even with Google.
But in the header, it doesn't show up? Okay, so obviously something's not quite right there. You've got, so that it gets set here, profile.email0.value. This is the line where we're setting the username. And up here, profile fields, ID, and emails. It's exactly the same? All right.
Even with the normal login.
Okay. All right, so it's a different issue. Just for next week's class. Next week, just as a reminder, is the Train and Tech Expo that we talked to you guys about. That's at the Barry Molson Center. So that is during our class next week, and I would like to encourage you to go. I'm going to attend. Is anybody planning to attend that? Might be a good idea. I believe there's actually transportation provided if you, from the college. Let me check on that.
I think you have to, because last time I was there and before I did that.
I don't know if they provide.
Last time I did.
Okay. Okay, hang on. Okay, so if you are taking, yeah, so you actually can order business cards if you're participating. Here, let me just open this up. We can look at it. So it's career fair prep workshop. These are some events. So yes, you can register by taking the bus. There's a link here at Career and Co-op. If you use Employee Georgian. So this is a good opportunity. There'll be lots of local tech companies there. So you can get a business card that will look like this. You need 48 hours. So if you're interested, you need to do this. Although it's not free, it's $8.50 for 20 cards. So here's the exhibit website. So it's on Tourism Barry's site. So we will have a booth. Scott and I will be there for part of the day. So there's information for job seekers. Here's the schedule. I will post this link. So the morning is really focused on post-secondary students from 8:30 to 10. So the afternoon is on high school and elementary school. And then open to the public. So the best time for you guys really is the morning. So I will send out the link as an announcement, but what I want to do is I don't want to penalize anybody who's interested in going this by having class. So next week, you don't have to attend this event. I would recommend you do, unless you already have a job lined up for after school. So what I will do for next week, we're going to start into AngularJS. I'm going to do that as an online lesson. So you can just do that lesson. We're going to do Angular for the next 3 weeks. Okay. So you'll want to start and do that lesson sometime before we come back in 2 weeks. Okay. There's one other thing. So let me just make this announcement. And I want to give you guys a small lab. So let me show you the lab. I'll extend the due date. Okay, I'll give you a week to do the lab. Okay. So I will modify it. So the lab is basically to practice authentication. Hang on, where is it? So I'll make it due next Tuesday. Sorry, I'll make it due next Monday night. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. It'll be useful practice for you. We've kind of done authentication together as a demo. So what I want you to do okay. These instructions are no good. I'm going to change this. Here's what I want you to do. With the card tracker, is everything in manufacturers is still public, right? So change it so that on the manufacturers, You need to be logged in order to see the links and access any of the create, edit, or delete functions in the controller. That's it. Pardon?
I've already done it.
All right, good for you.
I
Okay,
didn't know it was a lab.
we'll do that as a lab. So I'll just rewrite the requirements. Okay, so everything we did with cars, so you don't have to build the login and register pages again. It's the same website, right? You already have them. So just add the logic to manufacturers or makes index and add the link to the functions and call the isLoggedIn function on all of the methods except index to make them private. Okay, I'll rewrite the instructions. If you need to, yes, it would be best, if you can, would be best to try and get your own, to resolve yours so that you're working with your own. If you have to, then yes, you can. But at the very least, if you use mine, you should be changing the Google keys and the database to use your own stuff and not mine, right? There's no reason you can't have your own MLab database and your own Google Google app. But I would prefer to see it with your own.